we have a deal with the EU that is ready to go. It is oven ready, as I never tire of it. It is, you just put it in the microwave and there it is.
Oven ready then, but time now for some new ingredients.
This is the perfect metaphor for what we're going to do.
2, 1.
Core aspects of an international treaty which form the basis of the UK's exit from the EU are now in Downing Street sights. With EU talks moving slowly, Boris Johnson is to sanction unilateral changes to the process which was designed to guarantee no hard border on the island of Ireland. The agreement did that by keeping Northern Ireland closely aligned with the EU. Some of the new UK proposals are modest, others may have far-reaching consequences in the eyes of Brussels. The first change will ensure no customs paperwork on goods travelling from Northern Ireland to Great Britain. A change, though not necessarily a dramatic one, because the withdrawal agreement says nothing in this protocol prevents the UK from ensuring unfettered market access for goods moving from Northern Ireland to the rest of the UK's internal market. Heading back the other way, no change to the EU processes that will be required for goods travelling east to west. The UK accepts that Northern Ireland will be covered by parts of the EU Customs Code. The first big change is over goods which make their way from Great Britain to the Republic of Ireland, potentially attracting a customs duty. The UK will decide which so-called at-risk goods fit into this category. At the moment, the EU and the UK are meant to agree a joint system. Finally, the UK continues to accept that EU state aid laws will apply in Northern Ireland, but in the other big change, the UK will decide on grey areas where state aid in Great Britain may have an impact in Northern Ireland. A cross-channel clash in response.
There may still be one or two loose ends, and we just need the ability to give people the certainty they need to sort of legislate to give that clarity. And that's all this is about.
The full implementation of the withdrawal agreement, including the protocol in Ireland and Northern Ireland, is a prerequisite for the negotiations on the future partnership.
With a gulf between the EU and the UK, questions are being raised about whether a new partnership can be agreed with just 5 weeks to go. One government loyalist told me, hopefully the EU will now understand that we are fine with no deal. But a former cabinet minister who's a staunch Brexiteer whispered, Boris Johnson knows the challenge of no deal. Brexiteers believe the EU is to blame for the salvo from Downing Street.
Well, of course, the withdrawal agreement contained obligations for both sides to negotiate a new relationship at the end of the transition period. Sadly, the European Union is refusing to talk about anything except its own lines, and it's therefore impossible to make any progress with them, and so the negotiations have completely stalled. I think that the Prime Minister is effectively asking them to respect the fact that we are now an independent state. And I think one of the big problems that we've got, as David Frost, the Prime Minister's negotiator, has pointed out, is that the EU has still not internalised that the UK has left the European Union and is now an independent state. And they are still playing by the old rules that prevailed when we were part of the European Union.
The EU is nonplussed.
Well, I really can't see the point why Boris Johnson is doing this, because, of course, the reputation of the UK as a reliable partner will be absolutely shattered. Imagine yourself, for example, setting up a business with someone, and you have a first contract where you have, you know, some basic rules that you agree upon, and then you continue to discuss the details, and then your partner says, well, no, I kind of tear everything apart that we agreed upon. Do you want to continue with this partner?
A campaigner-in-chief renowned for pithy messaging. But nitty-gritty negotiations are an altogether more complex process.
Well, Nick joins us now. Nick, I mean, did people in Westminster expect this?
Well, this is certainly a big move, and let's not forget that this was leaked to the FT, which is not exactly on the number 10 Brexit wavelength. But I have to say, I don't detect in Downing Street that they're alarmed that this is out there. And if we look at the front page of tomorrow's Daily Telegraph, look at that headline there. Brexit deal never made sense, Prime Minister to tell EU. And it talks about how the Prime Minister's view is that that withdrawal agreement and how it deals with Northern Ireland is contradictory. So it looks like it's hardball tactics as you reach the final phase of the negotiations on the hoped for future partnership with the EU. Now, if you raise questions, as the Prime Minister is, about the deal that you signed for the exit, that is clearly going to raise alarm bells in Brussels. But I have to say, I don't detect an inflaming of the atmosphere. So this evening, the Prime Minister spoke to Emmanuel Macron, the President of France, cautious language after their discussion, talking about important to try and get a deal. Now, you saw in my film that I had a Brexiteer there, David Jones, supportive of the Prime Minister, spoke to a former cabinet minister in Theresa May's cabinet, not amused, saying this is brinkmanship by the Prime Minister, but it's a very dangerous game. If you do this, you can forget any idea of a US trade deal, because the Irish American caucus and Capitol Hill will not like this.
Is it brinkmanship, or is it, as some opponents of the Prime Minister are suggesting, a deliberate attempt to torpedo the whole thing?
Well, look, we have been here before. There was tough rhetoric last year, and then we got that exit deal. I have to say that the view in the Boris Johnson circle about are we going to get a deal and what is going on is mixed. I spoke to one person who is familiar with the Prime Minister and familiar with Dominic Cummings, his chief strategist. Now, this person is hearing lots of no-deal vibes from Dominic Cummings. Why on earth do we want to tie ourselves to these EU rules? There's a great future out there, is the view of Dominic Cummings. But this person, who knows them very well, says they've not written off the idea of a deal. This person saying, look, the Prime Minister went before the country in the general election talking about, as we saw there, an oven-ready deal. Yes, it was the exit deal. Yes, he's talking about amending it. Yes, it was not the future partnership. But he went before the British people and said, I'm the person to do a deal with the EU, and some concern about whether he might be reneging on the spirit of that message.
Nick, thank you very much. Well, is revisiting the withdrawal agreement even possible? Philippe Lamberts is a member of the European Parliament's UK Coordination Group. Hilary Benn is the chair of the Committee on the Future Relationship with the European Union. And Martin Howe QC is chairman of the pro-Brexit Lawyers for Britain group. Welcome to all of you. Philippe Lamberts, if we could start with a couple to you. I mean, when you see what's going on now, what's coming out of Downing Street, do you think it's a deal breaker?
Well, if the UK government seriously considers reneging on an existing and legally binding international agreement, then yes, it's a deal breaker, because as your commentator said, what's the trust that we can have as in a negotiation partner who considers that his own signature may not be worth anything?
Do you think they are being serious, though?
Well, I mean, the very fact that an elected government seriously considers the option of reneging on a legally binding international treaty is in itself a sign that anything is possible. So that should not be, well, if the country is attached to a rules-based international order, this should never be considered as an option.
Well,
and it seems to be considered by some in 10 Downing Street.
Well, there was a minister on the radio this morning who clarified. He said, we're just out to get straight one or two points that aren't absolutely clear about, for example, state aid in Great Britain as it might be seen to apply in Northern Ireland. These sort of detailed points that may not be clear in the withdrawal agreement. Is that fair?
Well, if that is the case, then in a treaty between two partners, only the two partners can clarify stuff that has been left unclear. So you cannot unilaterally clarify something in a treaty binding two equal partners. And therefore, I respect, of course, the full independence of the British government, but so should the British government respect the fact that the treaty binds it to something called the European Union, and the European Union has a say into clarifying whatever loose ends there might remain. But then again, when I read this morning's FT piece, it is about having a bill that would basically supersede or nullify parts of the withdrawal agreement, and that is clearly a deal breaker from the EU side.
Right, let's put that then to Martin Howe. Philippe Lamberts has got a point, hasn't he? You can't just unilaterally revisit things you've signed with another party. I mean, that wouldn't work in contract law or any other branch of law, surely.
Well, I think the problem is that Philippe Lamberts and others seem to be treating the United Kingdom as if we were still a member state. We are no longer a member state of the European Union, and the bill, well, the act that was passed to give effect for the withdrawal agreement contained within it a very important clause, now section 38 of that act, which declared it is recognised that the Parliament of the United Kingdom is sovereign, and in particular, sovereignty subsists notwithstanding directly applicable or directly effective EU law under the withdrawal agreement. Now, what the government is proposing to do is that there are aspects of the withdrawal agreement and the Northern Ireland Protocol which are capable, in the EU's view, of being interpreted in very, very damaging ways. In particular, there is a provision relating to so-called, highly technical, relating to so-called goods at risk.
Let's not dive into the technicalities, Martin, because you've made some important points there. So let's ask Hilary Benn about the gist of your argument there, which is that the withdrawal agreement guaranteed UK sovereignty, but it could now be interpreted in ways by the EU which would undermine particularly the Union.
Well, the first point to remember is that Boris Johnson negotiated this withdrawal treaty. He signed it. And if he's now saying, well, it doesn't make sense or I don't like it, well, he should have read the document before he put his name to it. That's the first point. Secondly, there is a mechanism for dealing with loose ends. I listened to George Eustace this morning, and the mechanism is the Joint Committee, where Michael Gove and Mr. Šefčovič, representing the EU, sit down and they have to reach agreement on, for example, what are goods that are at risk of entering the Republic of Ireland when they move from GB to Northern Ireland. And to suggest that you are going to unilaterally, by British legislation, reinterpret a treaty that you have signed of your own free will, I don't think helps the negotiations terribly well, because there was a stage earlier in respect of the Northern Ireland Protocol where famously, do you remember the Prime Minister said, if anyone asks you to fill in a form, give me a ring and I'll tell you can chuck it in the bin. And it took a while for the government to rebuild confidence with the EU that we were going to honour our obligations. And the final point, Mark, is this. If the UK begins to throw into doubt its commitment to international treaties, which it has freely signed, what does that do to the reputation of the country? And the point about sovereignty that Martin Howe's just raised, of course we are now a sovereign country. We have left the European Union. But we, as a sovereign country, decided to sign the treaty and we should abide by its terms.
Martin Howe, come on. I'm sure you want to come back on that. And there's the point that Hilary Benn made, which a number of people have made today, about comparisons, for example, with the Hong Kong agreement. Is the UK putting itself on the same level as China here in suddenly reinterpreting an agreement that it doesn't like anymore?
Well, I don't think the Hong Kong thing is comparable at all. I think if we take the provision about goods at risk, actually the consequences are very fundamental. Mr. Benn says, well, we should all leave it to be negotiated through the Joint Committee. But actually, under the protocol, the effect of that is the EU has a veto on agreeing a definition at all. And one problem is that could lead to a compulsory imposition of tariffs on all goods flowing from Great Britain into Northern Ireland, which is contrary to the principles of the protocol itself, which declares that Northern Ireland is part of the customs territory of the United Kingdom, and is actually contrary to the provisions of the Act of Union between Great Britain and Ireland of 1800.
But all these points were clear, weren't they, when the deal was signed? And this is the basis on which Conservative MPs went to the electorate, was that if you vote for us, we'll vote through this withdrawal agreement.
Well, yes, but the basis on which they went to the electorate, the fundamental basis, was to restore our sovereignty and our right to self-government. Now, another reason why I don't think this is any way comparable to the Hong Kong situation is there are serious arguments that in the way the European Union has conducted itself, and in particular in the way it has conducted the future relationship negotiations, it has not been acting in good faith under the obligation it undertook under Article 184 of the withdrawal agreement. It has behaved in a way seeking to compress the negotiations to get its view, to get its level playing field provisions into the negotiations.
Well, let's let Philippe Lamberts come back on that, Martin Howe. Let's let Philippe Lamberts come back on that, which is essentially the charge is the EU has not been negotiating in good faith, has shown very little flexibility, particularly on the level playing field provisions, and is just trying to put the squeeze on the UK in the final phase of this negotiation.
That's, I find really interesting, because basically that means that some are seeking actually a cause for breaching the withdrawal agreement and blaming the European Union for that. And also the argument about, well, the EU compressing the negotiation period. I mean, as far as I remember, it was the British government which decided to rule out any extension of the negotiation period. So it was not the European Union who wanted, which wanted to finish these negotiations in such a compressed time. So no, I think that the reason for that lies with the British government. So of course, the European Union has stood its ground and defended its, and is still defending its vital interests in the negotiation. So does the United Kingdom. And I think you cannot blame your negotiation partner for defending its own vital interest.
Quite.
But the fact is, again,
sorry to jump in on you there, Philippe, but let's just, because time is getting a bit short now, just to bring Hilary Benn back in. You're hearing this argument as it develops, and of course through your work in the committee and your intimate involvement with this, you've followed this every twist and turn of the way. Do you think these are essentially clarifications, as George Eustace was saying this morning, and is it in your bones? Is this a ploy, or is this a serious attempt to torpedo the whole process?
Well, until we see the terms of the legislation, we can't answer that question. But, time is short, Mark, and sniping from the sidelines about the other side's position isn't going to help us get the deal we need. Because the other worrying thing the Prime Minister has said this week is that leaving without an agreement would be a good outcome for the UK. Well, if you put that to British farmers and you put that to people who make cars in the United Kingdom, that facing the kind of tariffs they'd be confronted with if we don't reach an agreement, that is not in the economic interests of the country, particularly when businesses are having to cope with the coronavirus crisis. And frankly, both sides are going to have to move. They're both going to have to compromise, because if a deal isn't reached, then both sides will be responsible.
Well, let's see the text of that bill when it comes forward on Wednesday. Hilary Benn, Philippe Lamberts and Martin Howe, thank you all very much for joining us on Newsnight.